What are the success factors? Form of the government, whether it is authoritarian, democratic, hybrid, military, democratic, doesn't matter. It is the continuity, consistency, and predictability of economic policies which matters. Hasina Wajid and, Khalda Zia have been bitter rivals. We call them battling Begums. But their economic policies were exactly the same. So the investors did not feel any hesitation in taking decisions. And unless you have investment, GDP growth doesn't take place. So they have now gone to 30% of investment of GDP ratio, and we are still stuck at 15%. India had the Narasimha Rao, who took the plunge from the license Raj. But India did not take notice, or the world didn't take notice, unless Vajpayee came in, and Vajpayee continued the same policies. And then Manmohan Singh, who was the architect of the 1991 reforms, continued as a prime minister, and now Modi is actually doing much better than even Manmohan Singh, Vajpayee, and Narasimha Rao. So it's a continuity of the economic policies. Number two, there is now a political consensus that there is no ideological predilection which forms the content of economic policies. It is pragmatic economic policies which succeed. As circumstances change, you change the tune. So for 40 years, India was under the socialist regime. But then they had a balance of payment crisis, and they decided that this is not going to help the country. So what did they do? They switched over to liberalization, deregulation, and privatization, and the country took off. Number three, which is very relevant to Pakistan, is that reliance on external assistance, particularly borrowing, is a kiss of death, because the countries refuse the task of mobilizing domestic resources, and then they go around the world trying to find resources for them. But after a while, the world gets fed up that this country is just coming here only to beg us for assistance. So both for your dignity and for the country's future sake, do not rely on external assistance, but try to mobilize your own resources. Number fourth, that this state versus market binary is an outdated concept. It is no longer relevant in 21st century. You need a strong, capable government, and you need a well-functioning, competitive private sector. And in Bangladesh case, you also need very well-committed NGOs who really brought about the revolution on the social development side in Bangladesh. So it's the working together rather than confrontation between private sector, government sector, and the NGOs. I think we have to realize that. Number five, that participation in international trade, technology transfer, capital flows, and migration do benefit the domestic economy more than if the economy was a closed economy. China is 1.4 billion people. It's a large economy. But how did they become the second largest economy in the world and the largest exporting nation? Because they opened up the economy and penetrated into the US market, which they have a trade surplus for quite some time. So we have to go for this. In Pakistan, we have a closed mind. कोई भी बात अगर फॉरेनर कह रहा है या फॉरेन है यहाँ पर, तो हम सस्पिशन की निगाह से देखते हैं उसको. Open up your minds. Try to see what is good for the country and try to adopt that. The sixth point is that investment in human capital, female empowerment, and social and financial inclusion are absolutely essential if you want a sustained, equitable growth. You can have elitist growth, जो पाकिस्तान में जो हो रही है इस वक्त वो elitist growth है. इसको majority of the population को फ़ायदा नहीं हो रहा, कुछ segment of the population को फ़ायदा हो रहा है. तो अगर आपने females को पढ़ाया, लिखाया, labor force में लेके गए, उनको financial inclusion के उनके access to the finances होगी, और उनको आप education health करेंगे, you will be able to have a much better, outcomes. Seventh is on the devolution and decentralization and delegation of financial powers. 18th Amendment is very good. I have no problem with that. But it's incomplete. You have to devolve and delegate to the local governments. You have 250 million people. You can't say from Lahore that I will manage all these schools from the Secretariat. You have to empower and delegate those to each district government so that they can monitor and supervise. And finally, in today's world, digitization promotes efficiency, transparency, and citizens' access. India had big leakages in their social protection programs. Since they have digitized, all money goes to the